Amriteshware Namaha. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Amrita School of Arts and Science, Kochi, let me welcome all of you to ISMER 2022, International Symposium on Media Education and Research. This 3-day symposium will feature expert talks, paper presentations, and roundtable discussions focusing on suggestions, recommendations, and policy decisions on the theme Media for Social Change. Let us start today's proceedings with prayer and lamp lighting ceremony. I request Dr. U. Krishna Kumar, sir, Director and Dean, Amrita School of Arts and Science, Kochi, Sri Viju B., Assistant Resident Editor of Times of India, Kerala, Dr. S. Dinesh Babu, Assistant Professor and Head of the Department of Visual Media and Communication, Sampuche Swami Poonamritandapuri, General Secretary of Mata Amritanda Maimat, for lighting the lamp.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunattu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Asato ma Sadgamaya Tamaso ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om.
Our next program is a welcome dance by Gopika and Pooja, students of MAJMC. and Pooja. Now I invite Dr. U. Krishna Kumar, sir, the Director and Dean, Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham Kochi, to please deliver the welcome address.
Om Amriteshwari Namaha. My humble prostrations at the lotus feet of our most beloved Amma. My humble prostrations to Sambhujya Swami Purnamurtantapuri. My humble pranams to Shri B. Viju. And my humble pranams to all of you assembled here as well as those who are attending online. And my humble pranams to all the distinguished faculty and panel members of the international team going to present the views on media education research, especially focusing on how do you plan the media education research, how do you frame it towards a positive social change. Let me try to introduce our guest of honor, Pujaniya Swamiji, the General Secretary of the Mata Amrita Mutt. Though he has mentored himself as an electronics engineer and later on gone into the research on solar cells at the Raman Research Institute in Bangalore. Later on, he was fortunate to meet Amma, and he has been under the discipleship tutelage of our Amma, spreading the message of love and compassion and the philosophy of the Indian insight into this love and compassion throughout the world. Swamiji has traveled across the globe along with Amma and even otherwise many a times. As all of us know, Swamiji is a musician, poet, writer, and a prolific founder of the Sanatana Dharma and how to practice it in one's life. There are many thousands who come to Swamiji to seek his guidance on the various aspects of life. Derive the happiness out of life. How do we proceed ahead within the materialistic sojourns of life? How do you go ahead still living happily? These short words of introduction let me offer on behalf of the Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham and on behalf of all of us assembled here and online. The most loving, respectful welcome to our Pujaniya Swami Purnamurtantapuri. Today's virtual international symposium on media education research, framing the future for social change, has been devised by the Center for Innovative Design and Media Applied Research, which is part of the Visual Media and Communication Department of this campus. And long since we have been working on this problem area of the social change and the media education research. There are many scholars working in these areas. Out of the 17 PhD scholars who are working in the department, many are working in these areas. So it's their wish and the most sincere efforts of the faculty of the department led by Dr. Dinesh Babu that led us to the culmination of this beginning of this international symposium. Rather than just a webinar type of symposium, it's going to have panel discussions. And this will bring out very well, serve as a guiding spirit to this thematic area. And we are happy that person who has been working in the area of the media and has been invited to release a book which the department has published based on the findings in these areas during another such initiative called as the Meet the Scholars held few months back. And the outcome of this Meet the Scholars initiative came into the form of a book which will be released here. And the book release will be done by Sri B. Viju, the assistant editor of Times of India, Kerala. He kindly consented to do it during this inauguration. Sri Biju is a seasoned, experienced journalist. He writes on a range of issues with far-reaching social and societal impact, including ecology and environment. Also, he writes on the endangered habitats and microhistories of dwellers of these habitats. He writes on the social development, how these factors are affecting the social development of the world, and how the right of information, right to the information on infrastructure should pave the way for this social development. In a recent book, The Flood and Fury, Ecological Devastation in the Western Ghats, Sri Biju has created a multi-layered narrative of the ecological devastation of the Western Ghats and the threat to the sustenance of communities living in this region. Through his journalistic journey of writing, Sri Biju here tries to bring out the injustices meted out to the most vulnerable in our society and how it becomes a voice of the voiceless. His writing portrays multiple faces of reality in a way that allows truth to shine through the reader. On behalf of the Amrita Vishwavidyapitham, I extend to Sri Viju a most hearty welcome. As I mentioned previously, the specialty of the event is, one of the specialty of the event is the inaugural function is releasing of the book, The Media Optimization, a Key to Social Change. All the articles presented by the research scholars of our visual media department during the global webinar on Meet the Scholars have been compiled and published as a book. This book will be formally released by our Pujaniya Swamiji, and it will be received, the first copy of it will be received by Sri Viju, and it is most apt that this seminar, which brings about the deliberations on social change, the book is being received by a person who is ardently, a journalist who is ardently working in the area of social change. And before I formally welcome all the dignitaries, all the panelists in their physical absence here, and all the dear students and faculty members, it's my pleasure to formally introduce the respected panelists who are going to be delivering the sessions here. And it's a 3-day international symposium, and 14 top-notch speakers who are experts in the global media industry will deliver their valuable thoughts on various aspects during this symposium. They all will be introduced in detail during their presence in the symposium. Just to mention, Dr. Shakila T. Shamsu. Formerly, she was an officer on special duty on the National Education Program of the Department of Higher Education of Government of India. Professor Manisha Pathak Shilat is a professor of communication and digital platforms and strategies at the Mudra Institute of Communications at Ahmedabad. Professor Anubhuti Yadav is heading the Department of New Media, and she is also the course director of Advertising and Public Relations at the Indian Institute of Mass Communication, New Delhi. We once had, a few months back, the profound experience of listening to Professor Anubhuti Yadav. Also, we had the experience of listening to Dr. Umashankar Pandey. Today also he'll be, these 3 days, he will also be present here. And he's Associate Professor and Head Department of Mass Communication and Journalism at the Surendranath College for Women, Kolkata. Dr. Kanchan K. Malik, Professor and is the UNESCO Chair on Community Media, the Department of Communication at the University of Hyderabad. Professor Sanjeev Benavat, former Head, Center for Mass Communication, University of Rajasthan. Dr. Thanu Dang, the Assistant Professor at the Khwaja Mainuddin Trustee Language University in Lucknow. Dr. Tony Reeves, MD at the Doing Learning, Creative Learning Specialist at the University of Lancaster in UK. Professor Vinod Pavarala, Senior Professor at the Department of Communication and also the UNESCO Chair on Community Media at the University of Hyderabad. Dr. George Latif Sedam is Assistant Professor of Digital Media at the International Academy of Engineering and Media Science at Egypt. Dr. Anushka Kulkarni, the Assistant Professor at the Wellington Institute of Management at the University of Mumbai. Dr. Tasha Singh, Professor, Communication Research at the Galgotias University, Greater Noida in India. Galgotia is one of the top-notch universities, ranking within the top 20 universities in India. Dr. Feda Mohammed, the Assistant Professor of Journalism, Faculty of Mass Communication, Ahram Canadian University in Egypt. And Shri Shyam Kurup, the Deputy Managing Director of Aegis Group of Companies in India. I take this golden opportunity given to me to welcome all of these distinguished, learned media professors and professionals who have kindly consented to be with us during these 3 days of the different deliberations. Once again, welcome you all to this session, and let me take this opportunity to thank Gopika and Pooja who performed the dance. And understand Gopika has been one with the dance right from her age of 4. It's very obvious in her performance also. So let me thank these youngsters and wish them all the best in their career for dance also. Let me take this opportunity to thank everyone who are participating in this, both online and on campus. And I request our Pujaniya Swamiji to bless and release the book on the topic of the Meet the Scholars, which came out as a outcome of the Meet the Scholars event.
I request Sampocha Swamiji Poonamritanandapuri to release the book and hand over the first copy of the book to Sri Viju. Now,
It was the idea of Dr. Dinesh that the authors of the book and the topics covered in the book can be displayed along with the book itself. So I agreed to it. It was a grand idea, and that was released first and the book was released next.
Now, I request Dr. U. Krishnakumar sir to please hand over the copies of the book to all the authors. I'll call out the names. Dr. N.V. Sridharan, Dr. Shemin Balachandran, Dr. Sreena K, Dr. Sreena K, Dr. S. Dinesh Babu, Miss Aparna Sumit, Miss Rekha KP, Mr. Varun Prabha, Shola Lohit, Miss Mithila MS, Miss Sneha KM, Miss Anashwara Krishna, Miss Shweta A. Kumar, Miss Lakshmi Ravindran, On behalf of Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham, I would also like to mention and thank the authors, Dr. P. Ravindranath and Ms. Kartika C.K., who could not join with us today for the event. Now, I request Sri Viju B. to kindly address the gathering.
Respected faculty and dear students, Dr. U. Krishnakumar, sir, that is very kind of you to give me a respectable introduction. Yes, he's not around. He's not around. Thanks so much. My humble prostrate to Amma, first of all. Swami Purnimananda, Nityanandapuri, I am meeting him for the first time. Swamiji, asking for your blessings. Okay, so I'm going to be pretty informal in my speech. First of all, let me, as Sir was talking about my background, I come from media. I've written a book called Flood and Fury. First of all, I just want to know how many of you are actually seriously interested to pursue journalism as a career? Just lift your hands. I mean, I thought at least 50% would come. It's quite good. This side? Nobody? Okay, so how many? 1, 2, 3, 4. And how many want to become writers? How many want to become writers? Forget journalism. How many want to become writers? Just 1, 2, 3. Good, good. Yeah, that's good. So rest of you, what do you want to do? Just a formal, it's a small interaction. I just want to know. What do you want to do? Basically, you want to become researchers? What is it? What is it? I can't hear you. What do you want to do? What do you want to do in life? What are your career plans? Anybody can tell me. I mean, writers and journalists, apart from writers and journalists, what are you planning to do in life? No, I want to make it pretty informal because in journalism school, especially in reputed schools like this, they teach you about how to write. These tools are taught. I mean, once you come out of journalism schools, you can write. I mean, you can hold a camera, you can edit. All those things can be done. I mean, it's not rocket science. But what is not being taught these days are the value systems. Why do you want to be a writer? Why do you want to be a journalist in the first place? I mean, that is the most missing. That's so important. That's missing in newspapers today, sir. That is the key. That is the meaning that brings in meaning to our writings. So if you're planning to get into journalism, I'll tell you the bad news. The bad news is that you won't be able to sleep much. So in fact, I sleep at around 1 a.m. Because we have to close our editions at 1 a.m. I get up at around 5:36, do a little bit of yoga, and after that I start reading. I have to read all the newspapers. But that is a sad news. That's a bad news. But the good news is this is the best profession in the world, as far as me. This is the best profession in the world. I'll tell you the reasons. The first reason being, where else can you get so much of opportunity to meet so many interesting people in your life? Nobody can get that. So many interesting people. I've met so many interesting people in my life. Where else can you have positive? Where else can you make positive impact by writing? Positive impact in the lives of people. I mean, where else can you do that? Only through writing. I've been convinced. I've been in the profession for the last 25 years. I've been convinced. If you write a very good story, people will read and it will make a serious impact. I'll give you a small example. As the introductory speaker spoke about my credentials. One of the stories, I was working in Bombay for 15 years with various newspapers, including Times of India. So in 2010, I happened to break this big story of the decade. They say the Adarsh building scam. So there is this huge building that came up in Kolaba, which is in South Mumbai. It's a beautiful. It was meant for the war widows, Kargil war widows. The building was meant for the Kargil war widows. So unfortunately, all politicians across all parties, the Shiv Sena, the BJP, the Congress, all the party politicians usurped the apartments that was meant for the Kargil war widows. Imagine. And I was doing, as you had mentioned, I was doing a lot of stories with regard to right to information. So under the Right to Information Act, I got the list of people who had got those flats illegally. And every politician in Maharashtra had a flat in Kargil, in Adarsh building. And we did a series of stories. The second story, I mean, I remember doing stories on the whole building didn't have coastal regulation zone recognition approval. There was a army ammunition depot near to the building. I mean, it's dangerous. I mean, how can you have a building coming up over there? So we did a series of stories. And the last story actually hit the nail in the coffin, I would say, because the last story was this, there is this name called Sharma. So we investigated and we found out Sharma was actually the mother-in-law of the then Maharashtra Chief Minister, Ashok Chavan. So we did the story, we splashed it on the front page. The second day, so naturally, the second day, we thought the politician would they will all get shocked. The next day, my editor told our political reporter, Prafulla, he's a veteran political reporter. He knows every politician. So he said, go and interview Ashok Chavan. He said, my God, how will I interview Ashok Chavan? He's, I mean, he will be angry. No, you just go and meet him. He said, that's journalism. You go and meet him. So this our Prafulla, he went early in the morning. He went and met Chavan. You won't believe it. Chavan said, "इसमें क्या है? सबको मिला है, सबको मिला है. Everyone has got it. So what is the problem? What's the big deal?" We put it on the front page. Fortunately, the story was not, unfortunately for him, the story was not taken well by Congress President Sonia Gandhi. He asked Ashok Chavan to resign. I mean, he had to resign. So, I mean, that was a huge story. In fact, if you look at 2011, 12, 13, there was a series of scams, sir. This was Adarsh. Adarsh was the beginning. You had CWG scam. You had 2G spectrum scam. There was a series of scam actually, and there was this was a platform on which Anna Hazare movement started. And this was a platform on which Modi wave started. Modi didn't have any charisma that time. Their plank was anti-corruption. Congress had gone to the dogs. This was, I mean, so media actually, I would say it's not, I mean, people say Modi wave, Modi wave. It's not Modi wave. It's basically the stories that we had broken. Those national newspapers had broken that time. That is the reason people wanted an alternative. I mean, BJP coming back to power, and that's a different story altogether. But the fact remains that media has so much of power. So this is one simple story I'm talking. I mean, this is a big story, but you should. I'm saying don't go for big stories. There are other very small stories that you can do in life. I mean, if you're planning to work in a newspaper organization, you can do so many small positive stories that can make an impact in life. I would now the question that always we think is, what is journalism? I mean, this is a question that we always talk. What is journalism? Can anyone define what is journalism? Simply, what is journalism? I mean, you talk about what journalism is. Can anyone say what is journalism? No, this is my view. Journalism is basically man's relationship, I mean, with society. I mean, all writing, whatever writing that you do is your relationship, man's relationship with society. In this intersection comes all stories, isn't it? You'll have different kinds of stories. You will have humorous stories. You will have stories based on political stories, economic stories. So where do you define? I mean, this is the basic crux of journalism. So if you're planning to get into journalism, what you should do is you should start observing the change around you. There are lots of changes happening around you. If you're planning, see, tools, the faculty will teach you tools, how to write and all those, how to catch a camera, all those things will be taught. But the crucial aspect if you want to become a good journalist is to keep your ears and eyes open and to see what is happening around you. There are lots of changes happening around you. So this is the fundamental premise of journalism, the relationship between man and society. This intersection is where the stories lie. But today, if you look at this was the fundamental premise of journalism. But today there is one more aspect that has come into journalism, which is man's relationship with nature. This has been completely ignored in the last 20 years. You won't see environmental journalism. You won't see environmental journalism. Imagine, it's shocking. There is no environmental journalism in our country. There are no environmental reporters being assigned in our country. It's shocking, actually, because nature has been now I'll come back to my how I got exposed to this idea. In 2005, Bombay was flooded. In 2005, July 26, there was a huge flood in Bombay. So as part of reporting, we were sent to different areas. I went to places like suburbs like Kalyan and Dombivli, etc. And I came back. We were doing series of typical disaster stories, human interest stories. We were doing a lot of stories. Then one of my sources, he's a social activist also. He said the reason for Mumbai to floods is because you had reclaimed the Mithi River. Now there is a river called Methi River which flows through Mahim Creek and it goes to the sea. This river was completely reclaimed for construction of the airport, and the river was actually diverted. That was the reason for the floods to happen. Imagine. So you don't have a vision. Why do you can't reclaim river that is going through the heart of the city? That was the reason for. And after that, there was a PIL file based on our report. There was a PIL file in the Bombay High Court, and the Bombay High Court said, please remove the, all the waste from the media, which has never happened. As usual, things are still same. The similar situation has happened here in 2018 floods, Kerala floods. Since I had got exposed to that, I knew we were given two reasons for the floods to happen in Kerala. The first reason was obvious, rains. We had 900 millimeters of rainfall. I mean, it's an obvious reason. Politicians, even our CM also said that because of rains. It's so obvious. I would say it's so childish. The second reason given was the delay in opening the shutters of the dam. We had 58 dams in Kerala. Obviously, when they said because due to power generation, we want to hold down. I mean, that was the reason given by opposition. So these two reasons were given. But my investigation, as I traveled from one end of Western Ghats across 6 states, this is part of my book, and I traveled and spoke to people, and my investigation revealed the fundamental reason for the floods to occur in Kerala is because of reclamation of wetlands, reclamation of rivers. That's the only reason. Because of destruction of Western Ghats, the ecosystem. That's the fundamental reason. This point, we won't address this point. Government won't address this point because if you start addressing this point, we'll have to change our development model. We won't change you can't, because the whole issue of K-Rail. What is the issue of K-Rail? Do we need K-Rail in Kerala? We can't have mega infra projects in Kerala. So our development projects here, we are very, we talk about anti-Modi. That is the whole idea. No, we talk about centrist, fascist. What is happening in Kerala, isn't it? In Kerala, if you look at the kind of unrest which is happening against K-Rail, how they are sort of bullying people around. It's shocking. So the problem now here is, what is the developmental model that Kerala needs? That kind of discussion is not happening. It's not happening unfortunately, it's not happening in media. Media also, I am part of media. In television, what's happening, we know every day. There are so many debates happening, which is all political gossiping. There is no political insights coming out of those debates. It's very sad. Journalists, if you're planning to get into visual media, you should think, do you need to get into visual media? What are you planning to do? What impact can you make in life through your stories? That is ultimately what you have to think. What impact can you make in life through stories? If you're anchoring, if you're putting 3-4 people and asking them to talk, and they'll talk whatever they want, is that journalism? I don't think it's journalism. Journalism is all about going out in the field, covering areas, as Sir was saying, giving voice to voiceless. As part of writing this book, I went to Attapadi. I stayed there for a week. The tribals, nobody talks about tribal issues in Kerala because they are not the vote bank. They're not the vote bank. That's the reason. Every other organization, every other Labour Party, every other NGOs have organized. They have organized force. You have CIDMAR. They all have parties, but there is no voice for tribals because they're not vote bank. So these are the stories. And also I would say in Kerala, the problem is, again, I was just talking to a teacher before the session. The problem in Kerala, the journalism in Kerala is all about, there is more of, there is too much of political coverage. I don't think we need to make politicians celebrities here, because even bad publicity is publicity. Like people like PC George, for example. He wants to be on. He'll come and abuse, and he's becoming a star, isn't it? So the problem is within the media. We should not put people. We should not put politicians. We should on TV. Why should we put politicians? It's not happening elsewhere in the world. Imagine. It's not happening elsewhere in the world. You look at BBC, for example. You will see hardly politicians when the story is occurring, they'll talk. That's all. Otherwise, it's serious stories that they're doing. So we need to change. We need to bring in a fundamental change in the way we report, way we do journalism in this country, particularly in Kerala, because we are too much of politics and too much of we are only looking at peripheral issues. Just for example, last month, if you all believe, there was searing heat, isn't it? It was so much of hot. It never was so much of heat. At the same time, the rainfall, the IMD data says rainfall was 100% extra as compared to normal. So it's a classic instance of climate change. We are not talking about that. Kerala is changing. Kerala, I mean, we did a story yesterday. It was Times of India. There's a place called Kumbalangi. How many of you have gone to Kumbalangi? You must have seen Kumbalangi nights, right? Kumbalangi is an island on the mouth of Vembanad Lake. Kumbalangi is singing. We did a big story yesterday. I mean, entire waters are getting into Kumbalangi, the village of Kumbalangi, and people are. I would say Kumbalangi might be the first climate refugees in the country. They might have to shift out. So these are serious issues which Kerala is going to face in the coming years. So if you're planning to start reporting, if you're planning to write, you should look at all these changes. That's my humble request. You're planning to get into writing. Otherwise, you can go on writing. I mean, people will give you all kinds of news, and we can go on writing. But I think if you want to make a change, you should look at all those aspects. Finally, I think I'll end with a saying by a tribal chief, Seattle tribal chief. It's a very nice saying. He says that man did not weave the web of life. We are just a strand of that. We are just a strand of this web. So any strand that you're going to disturb that, it will affect you also. In Upanishads also we have said, Prakriti Rakshatu Rakshatu. One who respects, one who protects nature, nature will protect you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, I request Sampoche Swami Purnamritanandapuri to bless the gathering with a few words.
Snehalokasumohanavadanam Karunatranat Nayanam Ramyam Sritajanapalana Vigram Saumyam Amritanantamayim Pranamamim. Om Amriteshwariya Namaha. My humble salutations to Sri Biju and all my divine sisters and brothers. I'm not going to give you a speech. All the speakers are waiting to speak to you. I am available here all the time, no problem. And few points only. Amma says that this whole universe is a university. We have to learn a lot from this university. Just by seeing, just by hearing, just by enjoying, you can learn those lessons of perfection. The purpose of our study is to reach the state of perfection. Actually, all of us are trying to become perfect, but we are becoming more and more imperfect. Once a disciple asked the master, how to become successful in my life? Then the guru said, take care of your food. The disciple became very happy. Okay, I am interested only in food. Is it enough? Then the guru said, no, whatever you see is also food. Whatever you hear is also food. Whatever the sense organs deals with, all are food. So all those food should be pure. When your personality become pure, then you can easily become successful in your life. Nowadays, good scenes are not available. Good news are not available. Good water is not available. Good food is not available. Purity is not available. So we need some pure souls like all of you. Pure souls to become messengers of perfection, messengers of purity. Then the media also will become pure. There are so many good things happening around the world, but it won't appear in the media. We should be able to inspire people to do good actions. Of course, we have to show the drawbacks, but Compared to the good things happening around the world, the drawbacks are very little. I have traveled around Amma more than around the world with Amma for more than 30 times around the world. Every country, I could see only good people. Majority in every country are always good. Only few people create problems. All are not terrorists. Only few people are terrorists. All are not criminals. Only few people are criminals. So, but the news, if you open the TV or read the newspaper, more negative news. So we should, what is the dharma? Just now we heard about the dharma of the journalist. Actually, the Bhagavad Gita says, dharma rakshati rakshidaha. One who protects dharma will be protected by dharma. Dharma means actions with love, without expectation. Actions with love. When you do something out of love, it becomes beautiful. After being with Amma for so many years, whatever I have learned from Amma, I can tell you in 4 lines. There is music, even in silence. There is dance, even in stillness. There is beauty, even in ugliness. There is coolness of bliss, even in the heat of suffering. Love makes everything extremely beautiful. We can pray to Amma to make us the embodiment of love and to spread the fragrance of love around the world. Thank you so much. Namaskar.
Thank you, Swamiji. We will now conclude the inaugural session with Shanti Mantra.
ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ